Hello, and welcome to the DC Rock History Podcast. This is the final episode for Season 1, and boy, do we have a good one for you. We are talking about the Nighthawks and their 1976 album, Open All Nite. It's actually the only album of all covers that we'll probably talk about on this entire show. But the Nighthawks really embodied a certain kind of band in DC, and we just couldn't overlook them. Not only that, they formed in the 70s, but they've stayed together and continued to tour up until today. So they were hot on the scene back then, and they're still relevant and doing great work. So this band just could not be overlooked. So today with David Goodfriend of Goin' Goin' Gone, we are going to dive into the Nighthawks Open All Nite. I will say right up top, David Goodfriend's band, Goin' Goin' Gone, who has also been around for decades, is playing their final show on the 19th at Hell's Bottom in Tacoma Park. So make sure to check them out. Please also rate and review this show on your favorite podcast app. It's the end of the season, but we want to make sure that we still keep our audience growing until we kick off for Season 2. On that note, from Alex and I, we just want to say a huge thank you. This season has gone even better than we dreamed it would. It's been so great to connect with so many amazing guests and talk about these albums and the city that we love. So we'll catch you again soon. And without further ado, let's go into our final DC rock history block of Season 1.
Flex your head. It's time for some hardcore history.
The Nighthawks, a band that epitomizes the gritty soul of blues rock, emerged from Bethesda, Maryland in 1972 under the leadership of harmonica virtuoso and vocalist Mark Wenner. Rooted in the traditions of old school blues and rock and roll, the original lineup featuring Jimmy Thackery on guitar, Don Monahan on bass, Bill Holland on keyboard, and Larry Bollet on drums, honed their craft in DC's bustling music scene, playing at venues like the Far Inn and Graffiti. Over time, the band evolved both in sound and personnel, leading to the formation of what many consider their classic lineup: Wenner, Thackery, bassist Jan Zukowski, and drummer Pete Ragusa. Together, they solidified the Nighthawks as a relentless touring act, bringing the raw power of the blues to stages across the country. In 1976, the Nighthawks were ready to capture their electrifying live energy in the studio, leading to the release of Open All Nite. Recorded at Track Recorders in Silver Spring, Maryland, and featuring a live track from DC's iconic Cellar Door, the album showcases the band's deep respect for blues legends like Sonny Boy Williamson, Muddy Waters, and Elmore James, while focusing on their own fiery energy and style. Open All Nite is not just an album, it's a time capsule of a band at their peak, performing with a raw, unfiltered passion that made them a staple of DC's music scene and beyond. Hello, and welcome to the DC Rock History Podcast. This is a very special episode. We are talking about the Nighthawks, but not only that, we are finishing out Season 1. This is the big season finale, and we have David Goodfriend with us. David, I'll let you introduce yourself in just a minute, but before we get to that, let me check in with my co-host. Alex, how are you today?
I am fine.
Well, let me ask a more pointed question, Alex. How do you feel at the end of this first season? We've run a marathon together. Are you drained? Do you need electrolytes? Where's your body and soul?
Exactly. It's been one just breathtaking marathon. People don't realize this, but we recorded all of these back to back, all 12 hours in a row across, 36 days, 48 cities. It's just been breathtaking. I barely remember anything. But in all seriousness, the series has been incredibly educational for me and has made new connections. And those are like the two best things that you can expect from any kind of community. And so for that, I thank you for doing all the research and allowing me to slide in and take the amount of credit that I do. Thank you.
Well, thank you for bringing the levity and the good times because, what can I say? I'm a rock historian first and foremost, and I get too in the weeds sometimes. And Alex, as my co-pilot, you always keep me, you bring me back to the fun of it all. So I appreciate you. Thanks to you as well. But without further ado, we have a very esteemed guest with us today. We have David Goodfriend, a local musician and perhaps something of a rock historian himself. David, welcome. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to these days in the DC music scene? I see you're working with the Shambles. Is that right?
I wouldn't call myself a rock star, but I've been playing with a band called Going, Going, Gone in this town for probably 43 years. And we're kissing everybody goodbye 2 weeks from yesterday at Hell's Bottom.
Give us the official date on that, because we're going to put this out.
Yeah, I'm having a really hard time hearing you guys. I hate to say it. I mean, I can barely hear you.
Well, why don't we take a pause and you want to look for some headphones?
Give me a second to see if I can find some headphones, okay?
Yeah, no worries. Absolutely no worries. Alex, should we vamp? What should we vamp on?
Why don't you tell us what you have going on musically? Do you have anything on the agenda, on the schedule? What are you working on?
Oh, shucks. I've kept this under wraps, but yeah, I've tried not to talk too much about my own musical pursuits, but my band Baroque Royals is celebrating our 10-year anniversary on February 1st at Songbird with the North Country, who are one of the bands that we started out playing with. We haven't played with the North Country since like 2016, which is crazy. Last show we did together was in Richmond in like 2016 or 2017, maybe. I think it was 2016 though. So this is a great reunion for us, though those have been friends of ours the whole time. So we're playing with the North Country and Cal Rifkin, who I believe are a newer band, but I know that they are a great band. So yeah, really excited about that. Yeah, what about you? How's Stagecraft? Is it taking a holiday break or?
We are on hiatus at the moment. We are waiting to see if WERA, Arlington Independent Media, goes back on the air. I think for us, like we were trying to do like an open mic, but without the like, and this is what happens to it. There's not really, it's hard to get people into it unless you're willing to put in the grind. And Don and I are far too old to put in the grind at this point. So, it's because even like people were asking me like, well, how do people find out about this? And I was like, I don't know. How the fuck do people find out about anything? And they were like, well, what about social media? And I was like, I don't have fucking time for that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, geez Louise, man, And so, if we had the radio station and the airwaves again, I think, obviously there's some gravitas that's included there that can sort of help us get it together. But if that doesn't happen, I think that might be the end of Stagecraft.
Well, I think we need to, Airhead style, we need to go and take over the radio station. And
unfortunately, that's kind of what happened to get it into the position that it's in now. Is to do an Airheads type situation.
But yeah, go ahead and take us from the top.
Yeah,
what's
Going,
what's
Gone
been
has been playing in town for more than 40 years, and our singer is basically retiring. I'm not saying that we'll never play again, but we're done with the monthly gigging wars. And since this podcast is about the Nighthawks, Russ and I'm the guitar player, Russ is the singer. Russ and I have known each other since 1969 and have been playing together since 1971. And I moved to DC in 73. Russ moved here in 74. And I will say there was no band that meant more to us than the Nighthawks. I lived with Jimmy Thackery for a while. When Jimmy quit the Nighthawks, he basically played with us for 6 months. Dan Hovey, who is the Nighthawks guitarist now. I won't say he was in Going, Going, Gone, but he was playing with us a lot before he joined the Nighthawks. And I mean, we used to go see the Nighthawks, Russ and I, and just be in awe. And we would say, that's what we want to do. And Mark Wenner has been so kind to us. And really, I think there's been no band quite like the Nighthawks from this area. They mean so much to so many.
Yeah, and that's fantastic, and we're so lucky to have you on this episode. Thank you for joining us, because we just want to mine as many of these stories as possible. Let's just do, David, I'd love to hear just from you, maybe, what's your favorite venue from the past that has closed? What was the spot that you remember the fond that's no longer around?
The favorite club?
Yeah, favorite club that closed down. That'll be our icebreaker for today. What was your
so
favorite
many
club
of
back
them.
then?
Yeah, I'll go with Desperados.
Tell us what you liked about Desperados.
Well, we never played there, but whenever we would go there, they would let us in. And the first couple of times, we kind of looked at each other, and then we realized they think we're in the band. We looked the part, And it was just, they had every band I ever wanted to see play. So the Cobras there. I was at the Stevie Ray Vaughan show when nobody was there. It's a famous show that hundreds of people claim they were at. There were maybe 30 people there. My friend called me in the afternoon and said, Jimmy Vaughan's brother is playing at Desperados. So, I mean, we didn't know. We went to Desperados, and there was a place across the street that we always ate at. And we went there to eat, and there was this guy, and I said, he's got to be Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I went up and introduced myself, and it was him. And I just said, we're looking forward to seeing you. And he walked on stage with Lou Ann Barton, who lasted a half a song. She was so drunk, literally a half a song. And that really, I don't think there were 30 people in there. And after about 3 songs, I turned to Russ and I said, can you believe this? I mean, that happened to me one time before, because I saw the New Yardbirds, which was Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
not knowing what I was walking into. But Russ and I were just astounded. And it's just something I will just never forget. I mean, there was this, the Psychedelic was an amazing club. And the Bayou certainly has a special place, because we played the Bayou. And I feel, privileged to have done that. It was kind of a taste of the big leagues when you played the Bayou.
Which one had the best meal comps?
Feel to it?
No, which one fed you the best? Which one had the best comped meals?
I don't know. The Bayou, I guess.
There you go. I love it. Well, one of the things that we have focused on in this whole season is the club scene in Georgetown and the club scene in Maryland, where Danny Gatton, Roy Buchanan, Punky Meadows would all sort of get the reps in and really like become the musicians that they would be known to be. Do you have memories of not just the venues, but even just what it was like when it was live music in those areas, that you could just go and find a band and you didn't even know how, who they were? Do you have vivid memories of that kind of thing? Am I making sense with that question?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know where to be. We played with Danny a lot, so I got a lot to say. I could tell you a lot about Danny, but I always said,
please do.
I think we have the most amazing scene here. And back in those days, particularly, I mean, if it was a Monday night, you would have to decide who you wanted to go see play, because there was probably 3 or 4 great bands. As far as the Georgetown scene, I know what you're talking about, but I wasn't here for the heyday of that, really.
Right, late 60s kind of.
I did when I first came to DC. I was so intimidated by the quality of the guitar players that basically I just played basketball for 4 years. And my connection to the scene in the early 70s was Emmylou Harris and the Angel Band, because my friend was their guitar player and they rehearsed at our house. So
Really?
I never really went out much back then until Russ came. But back from like 77 to 84, I mean, it was incredible. The scene, every night there was amazing bands playing, and we would just go and see all these incredible bands, particularly the Nighthawks, and we just watched them and tried to imitate them and copy them, and it was just an amazing scene.
Do you have any sense of who was in the crowd and what made it so vibrant? Was it young political staffers? Was it students? Was it just regular people? Like all the above? Was there
I don't
any
think.
sort of like distinct, like these are the people that are coming out?
Well,
Um,
from I will say that the scene is still pretty good today, but we're older. So back then, I mean, I was in my 20s. I could go all night and not even think about it. I think it was mostly local music fans. I don't think it was political staffers. I don't ever remember actually meeting a political staffer, although I'm sure had to be some there. But it was mostly local people who love music, and there was plenty of music to love, and that's how I remember it.
That's amazing. What can you tell us about Emmylou Harris and her band when they were playing in DC? Because I'll just preface, I had her on the list originally as an artist to talk about, but by the time she started releasing music, she'd really left DC. So I kind of thought, you know what, maybe it's not a good fit. But obviously, you said she practiced at your house. That's incredible. What do you remember about that time?
But well, as far as I've said this to more than one people, you go to Nashville, you go to LA, and even New York City, there's a lot of great guitar players there, but none of them are from there. And I mean,
Yeah.
just think about go back to Roy Clark, Roy Buchanan, Danny Gatton. And the first time I ever met Danny, he asked me about Roy Buchanan, actually. It's the first words he ever said to me. Jimmy Thackery, Punky Meadows, who I never saw and didn't know. But there are so many guitar players, and if you're going to play guitar in this town, it's a really high bar. And it's even today, it's just extraordinary how many great, particularly great guitar players there are in this town. And I think for me, as far as all those bands go, I mean, the Nighthawks were just the pioneers. I mean, when Russ moved here, he got me out of my basketball playing ways and started dragging me to shows. And just about the first one we went to were the Nighthawks. And they were we would be excited for days to go to see them. We would be, if they were playing on a Friday night, on Tuesday, we would start getting excited about going to see them. And it was thrilling. They were a thrilling band to see. They had so much energy and so much charisma. And I think, they were the template for a lot of us here. That we saw how they did it, and we tried to do it too. Tried being the key word there.
And David, I'm sure it's not something you have statistics on, but do you have a rough estimate of how often the Nighthawks would play in DC? And let me preface by saying this, like, I'm in a local band, and we get to play the clubs around here, and it's quite a thrill. But I mean, it's tough to play more than 4 times a year would be the max. It's not, and I don't think that's uncommon for other bands either. I mean, it's at a certain point. So, anyways, what I'm getting at is I'm curious if the Nighthawks were the kind of band that maybe it didn't matter how many times they played, they were gonna fill the clubs, and not only them, but perhaps the scene itself was vibrant enough and just positioned in a way where, there's just a lot of noise these days between, I sound like an old fogey, but between video games and like between 24-hour news and Netflix and all these things, like there's a lot of things competing for attention. So maybe I'm filling in the gaps and projecting, but in my head, the Nighthawks could play at least once a month, a couple times a month. Does that ring true to you?
Yeah, there was no limit. They drew. They could play. If they, they didn't, but if they did play the psychedelic 10 times a month, it would have sold out 10 times. They would play on weekends there on consecutive nights, and then a few weeks later would be playing a local club. There's a complete record. There was a paper here called the Unicorn Times. You guys, I know, have to at least have heard of it. Probably, maybe even read it. And it was a monthly alternative newspaper, and the Nighthawks had a monthly ad in it listing all their gigs, and I would rush out to get it, and that's the first thing I would look for, and I would go, oh man, look, we would kind of follow their progression, but they would play at times locally, 7, 8, 9 times a month. We did too.
Wow.
And we drew well. So back then there was the crowd for it, and there wasn't really that limit that you get. Like if you're going to play a club, you'll play it 2 or 3 times a year. It didn't go like that back then. It really didn't. It was a little bit different than today. And they would play the Child Herald also, and they would play often. Thankfully, thankfully for all of us, they played here often.
I love it. Alex, I'm springing this on you. I forgot to tell you and ask in advance, but let's dive into a little bit of history. Would you mind reading from the outline, the M Street Shuffle?
Sure. The M Street Shuffle, 1978, iconic collaboration and jam session with George Thorogood on M Street. One of the most talked about events in Nighthawks history, the M Street Shuffle, occurred on the night of Thursday, July 27, 1978, when George Thorogood and the Destroyers were appearing at the Cellar Door in Georgetown, and the Nighthawks were right across the street at Desperado's. During Thorogood's second set that evening, the band launched into the song Madison Blues, and the club's light man sent a signal across the street for the Nighthawks to strike up the same tune. Thorogood and Nighthawks guitarist Jimmy Thackery then simultaneously exited their respective clubs and met in the middle of a bustling M Street, where they stopped traffic and jammed away on the tune for several minutes, with Thackery then moving over to the Cellar Door to join the Destroyers and Thorogood transferring to Desperado's to finish up with the Nighthawk. This was this is one of those legendary sort of things people talk about in DC to this day, and I'm sure, David, were you there? Did you see this happen?
No, I wasn't. That I'm pretty sure they did it in New York City too, and went to Times Square. And
wait, are you saying that this was a gimmick, that this wasn't a once in a lifetime event?
I think it was twice. I'm pretty sure they did it in New York City too. I'm almost positive about that.
My earth has been shattered.
Hey, no, they did it in DC first. I remember I got a phone call the next morning about it. Like, did you hear? So, this was obviously way pre-internet or cell phone, but the word did spread like wildfire about it. Like wildfire. Everybody was like, wow. And it's one of the coolest things ever here, I think. Boy, do I remember it.
Phil, can I ask David a quick question, just because it's on topic?
Please.
Yeah, so David, since you still play in music, and you did make mention of, like, things are kind of the same, you're just older. One of the things that I think modern musicians kind of like have trouble having in their heads is like the difference in getting someone's attention versus the old days versus the new days. For someone like you that's been playing music for so long, what have you seen in terms of difference versus what is exactly the same, or is there any difference whatsoever?
I mean, as far as pushing your band or something like that?
Well,
Getting
so if you're
attention for
talking about
yourself?
like, like the comparison that Phil just made about playing 4 times in a year versus the Nighthawks putting out a monthly listing of all their shows that they would be playing. Obviously, there's a difference in the crowd size and the amount of people that you can play to. But how did a band do that back then versus not do that now? Or
Okay.
is it a difference
Oh,
in the
oh,
people, the audience, or count level?
I'll try to be polite here because this is something that
Yeah, do it.
back in the days, it was all on the clubs to publicize it. I have seen a flyer or two of us, but I have no recollection at all of pushing any of our gigs, other than telling, some friends, hey, we're playing here. The clubs did it. The city paper did it. Before the city paper did it, the Unicorn Times did it. And most importantly, the Washington Post did it. Remember, they had the weekend section, and there used to be 3 and 4 pages of gigs. And that's how it was done. And, the Nighthawks were always packed. And we did pretty well, too. Most of our gigs were packed. Now, it is completely on the musicians to promote it. Completely. You get very little help from the clubs. It's mostly done on Facebook, as you guys know, I'm sure. I mean, I have my opinions on Facebook, but if you're a musician in a band in this town, you have no choice but to be on Facebook. You got to be on it. And that's where you publicize the gigs. With very little help for I mean, the clubs don't really do it now, and the Washington Post doesn't do it at all anymore, which getting a review in the Washington Post, if you put out a record, was golden. I mean, that's what you wanted to do, have the Post review it. And it hurts that the Post doesn't support the local music scene anymore. It really does. But yeah, it's completely different. It's a completely different way of doing things now. Which I'll say this. I mean, a lot of musicians aren't good businessmen, and it's hard enough writing a song, learning the song, getting good on your instrument, and then and on top of this, now you have to do all the promo and everything. So it's not a good business model these days. Let me say that. But the Nighthawks, as far as business goes, I mean, think of Mark Wenner has kept that band together more than 50 years. He is so smart, and that's just an incredible achievement, I think. Incredible.
It is an incredible achievement, and they've played all over, and I saw a great interview with them, and YouTube, I think, is where it ended up, and one of the new members was saying, I got on stage and they just started listing songs, and I had to learn them on the fly, and they had to learn something in the order of 90 songs, and it's they're a great band. They have a great breadth of their catalog is really deep that they can play from, and but David, back in the day, what obviously musicianship is going to be the number one thing, but was there anything special besides maybe Mark on the harmonica that made the Nighthawks stand out as a live band that put them a cut above? Was it the arrangements? Was it just the musicianship? Was it the song choices? Was it the variety of song choices? Or was it just that they were just that damn good?
Well, I think it was all the above. I mean, they were just so damn good. I think they were so much better than most of the other bands here. I mean, they were just better. Mark was so smart, and he knew exactly what he was going for. And when I first started seeing them, they didn't do all blues. They did a lot of Little Feat songs too, and they did them. They were amazing. But But back then, I was just getting turned on to the blues, and we would go hear the Nighthawks, and they would do these. A lot of the songs we did know. We were familiar with them, but not all of them. And we would go home and try to figure out, well, hey, what's that song? Which would take some doing. There wasn't an internet or anything. And, I should say, I want to, before I forget to say this, I was a Nighthawk for one night at the Bayou. Right? It was right
Hey,
after
tell us
Jimmy
about that.
Thackery quit. And Ratso, one of the great figures from here, one of the great human beings. Ratso and I were the guitar players in the Nighthawks for one night at the Bayou. And I blew the gig so badly. I was so nervous. I couldn't handle it. I really blew so many chords. I was just too nervous. And they were so kind to me afterwards. But that's something I'll never forget. I think I would handle it a little bit better now.
Yeah, you got to
thrill.
end that story before you blew it badly. No one's gonna ask. No one's gonna say like, hey, I'm happy to go. You just say like, hey, I played with the Nighthawks one night, and that's the end of that story.
Were you the only guitarist on stage, David, or
There's the Ratso and I. It took two of us to replace Thackery. Yeah, I lived with Jimmy for a while. And Jimmy basically played in Going, Gone for 6 months until he got the Assassins together after the Nighthawks. But I mean, when we would go see the Nighthawks, I would always want to. I mean, I'm a guitar player, so I would always try to sit in front of Jimmy. Just pick up a lick or two, and they all had charisma, but Jimmy and Mark on stage were just, you couldn't take your eyes off them. You really couldn't. I mean, there are old clips, I'm sure that you've seen on YouTube back from those days. And yeah, they've always been great. I should also tell you, I had a band called The Shambles. Well, I didn't have it. We had it for about 3 or 4 years, about 18 or 19 years ago. And Pete Canaris quit the Nighthawks to play with us. So
there you go.
Pete, who played in the Nighthawks for 10 years, was a bandmate of mine and is a close friend of mine. My bald-headed guitar, or 2 bald-headed guitar players. So, and I just told, it's amazing. I just told Pete this morning because we were texting each other. And I told him it took me a while until he was Pete and not the Nighthawks guitar player. Yeah, I was totally intimidated. Are you kidding? I'm playing with a Nighthawk? So, yeah. So there, I actually had a bandmate who was the Night. And Pete is a beautiful guitar player, just a gorgeous guitar player. Sweet.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a long list of killers that have played with the Hawks, and I have a theory before we get into our listening section. I have a theory I want to float to you, David. It's okay. So we've been talking. The first album that we talked about on this show was Bo Diddley, and then we pretty much fast forwarded to the 60s and spent a lot of time with bands that were they were American bands that were trying to sound like British bands that were trying to sound like Black American blues musicians from the 50s, right? So like we have this whole cycle of like even like who was it that was in the British Walkers? Was it Roy Buchanan, I think, or Danny Gatton? Anyways, regardless, there are these bands that are hearing British bands, and then they're trying to do that again in America and replicate that. But by the mid 70s, which is when Nighthawks or the Nighthawks Open All Nite comes out, you do have Ted Nugent, George Thorogood. A few years later, like you mentioned, you're gonna have Stevie Ray Vaughan. Like, it seems like American blues finds a new footing. It's like sleeker and more self-possessed. And I mean, I'm kind of talking about white American blues, because like Black American blues has done just fine since day one. But what does this track what I'm saying? Like the mid 70s seem to have like an energy around like, especially this guitar forward kind of playing that was no longer like guys in America trying to sound like Eric Clapton, but it's like American musicians trying to sound like themselves and really something, a new wave of blues that's the Nighthawks seem to be riding really well. Does that ring true to you at all for what you
Yeah,
remember of
it's
the
very
70s
astute.
blues?
Definitely. I mean, it goes back. I mean, I got into the blues from the first two Rolling Stones records. And my friend and I noticed that they were doing songs by McKinley Morganfield and Jimmy Reed. And also the Animals were doing songs by these people. So we went to Times Square and asked for records by Jimmy Reed and McKinley Morganfield. And the clerk was in hysterics. And, he came back and gave us some Muddy Waters records and Jimmy Reed. So I think maybe I'm a little older than some of those guitarists and not as good, but I think they were like me. They got into the blues through the British bands. And
Yeah.
Pete Canaris always told me and Russ that every song that we wrote, and it was our songs that we were in the Shambles, was filtered through a British viewpoint. And I think that's kind of true. But yeah, when you're talking about Jimmy Thackery and George Thorogood and Stevie Ray Vaughan, these people are so talented that they just put it in their own stew and it came out like them. And that
Yeah.
blue wave that you're talking about, I mean, I'm very aware of that. We took that was what we called it back then. There was a definite blue wave, and the Nighthawks were right in the forefront of it. And I think one person whose name has to be talked about today and who we just lost a little while ago is Tom Carrico. Tom Carrico managed the Nighthawks back then. Tom Carrico was the one who brought Stevie Ray Vaughan out east. And if it wasn't for Tom Carrico, we would have played one or two gigs and faded away. And nobody taught me more about the music business than Tom Carrico. But Tom Carrico was instrumental in the blue wave. Very instrumental. But that's a very astute observation that you made, I think.
Yeah, that's fast. Thank you, and that's fascinating to me. Was Tom working with multiple local bands, or mainly just the Nighthawks?
I think he was I don't know exactly who he worked, but no, multiple. I mean, he was working with us too. He didn't manage us like the Nighthawks, but he got us a lot of gigs. So
Yeah,
Tom helped a lot of bands. He ended up being Mary Chapin Carpenter's manager.
well, I mean, yeah, it's just interesting, and like, no use crying over spilled milk, but God, to be a musician these days is so different than back then. I mean, there are no figures like that who are helping local bands. There's promoters, and they're great, and I have a lot of love for the great promoters of DC, Dana Songbird and David Combs, who does Rediscover Fire. Like, I appreciate these people who do work extra hard for us, but yeah, I mean, it's not the same, and so I'll either have to cut out Alex's laugh or amplify it times 2. I haven't decided which one.
I mean, I think what it is, it's like most things in life, it's not specific to music promoting in DC. It's just life, right? There's some people who work pretty darn hard, and there's some people who mail it in. The people who work really hard, that's a really small group of people. And we celebrate everyone who puts in the hours. Of course we do. But it was just when you sort of said, there was the blanket statement that I was like, yeah, but no, then that's not to take away from any of the work anyone, we're all doing the best we can, baby.
I hear that. And speaking of the best we can, let's transition now to our listening section. We of course do our DC rock history block up top, so we'll have the history of the Nighthawks well covered at the beginning of this episode. But let's dive into a little listening for our album of the day, which is, of course, Open All Nite by the Nighthawks. We're going to kick it off with the opening track. I will say, this is the only album. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. Certainly, the powers that be here at the DC Rock History Podcast, they could hand down something that I'm not expecting. But this is probably the only album we're going to talk about that is all covers. This is a rarity for us. We celebrate mostly original music written in DC. But David, as you've been talking about, the Nighthawks just epitomized something that happened in DC and probably around the country. But, really we're here to celebrate like these pockets of DC that were so vibrant and had so much music. And, even though this album doesn't have any originals on it, it does really symbolize and signify how good the musicianship was here and how much of it there was going on. And, I have a few more things to say about that, but let's wait until we hear a little bit of, 9 Below Zero.
Phil, can you remind us the year this album came out, please?
I can. It was 1976, I believe.
Now, I think if I'm a historian, I'm pretty sure that's when cocaine really became big in DC. Do we think that this was related to the amount of musicianship in DC as well?
I think there's a reason it's called Open All Nite.
Yeah, well, cocaine had an influence. And before you play, I just got to say, I listened to this last night. It was so great to hear it again. I felt like I was back, at one of those shows. So, yeah.
The most dangerous drug of all, nostalgia.
And I'll also say I could care less whether they wrote a song on this or not. The blues is a lot, I think, about interpretation. I mean, the Nighthawks are as good as anybody interpreting a song. They make it their own song, I think.
I think that's really true. And on that note, let's check out 9 Below Zero.
Well, if you just listen to what you played there, there's so much to talk about. I mean, let's first talk about the dynamics. they're not there just slamming you over the head. Every once in a while, they do slam you over the head, and then they bring it right back down. And listen to Mark's incredible playing on that. And I will say there are so many harp players, Pete Canaris and I call it the misery whistle, who just never stop. They don't shut up for a second, and they're playing one little note after another. And for me, the key to a great harp player is their rhythm. And Mark's just a master at that. It's mostly, if you listen, I was listening to this last night and really zeroing in on Mark. And most of the stuff he does is rhythm, and then once in a while he'll let loose with that beautiful lead of his. And then you've got Jan playing the perfect bass line, Pete Ragusa answering it. I mean, it's just beautiful playing, I think. And this is 1976, when I'll come right out and say it. There weren't a lot of white blues bands playing it like that back then, they were, it's just beautiful. And I think you can get the sense of the excitement from this record too. Just the excitement that they brought. So yeah, I've always been in awe of the Nighthawks, and last night I was even that awe deepened listening to this again. It's been a long, and incidentally, I met Gene Rosenthal maybe 2 months ago, whose label released this. He's a character. You should do a story. Yeah, that's a whole other podcast, Gene. But yeah, I mean, there were. I mean, one other band even had a record out back then locally. It wasn't easy to do. So yeah, it's pretty amazing.
No, and other bands of that time were moving to California. They're getting signed to moving to California, and they were kind of, that was a mark of moving on to the big time for a lot of people. But these guys are hometown heroes, and I mean that just sounds so good. I don't know, David, if you ever had any experience with Track Recorders Studios where they recorded this album.
No, I don't. I don't. I've since via Facebook become friends with a few people who were players at Track, but no, and that wasn't. I mean, I use the words I wish.
Well, yeah, it's a great list of things that were recorded there. Some Linda Ronstadt, it looks like, and Gloria Gaynor even. So a lot of cool stuff was recorded at
Little
Track
Feat
Recorders in Silver Spring.
Linda Ronstadt,
of course, yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, and I think what you said about I forgot the wording exactly, but the harmonica playing is so economical. It doesn't go on and on. And I don't know if either of you guys have ever run into Fred Yonet, but he's a local harmonica player who can hold it down like this. He plays in Dave Chappelle's Juke Joint, as well as fronting his own band. But anyways, the tradition of tasteful harmonica players in DC does live on, of course, with Mark as well. But yeah, we've got time for maybe two more. Do you guys maybe three? Do you guys have anything that you want to hear? Any songs in particular that you want to call out?
They're all good. What's the one that I'm having brain lock? There's another mule kicking in my stall. I can't think of the name of that one.
Let's see. I'm got too many lyrics to remember them all. Help, Shake Your Moneymaker, Big Boss Man, Little by Little, Madison Blues, Next Time You See Me, That's All Right, Long Distance Call, Red Hot Mama. That's what we got on there.
Anyone's great, really.
Anyone's great. I love it. Let's go with Shake Your Moneymaker.
Yeah, they killed that.
Shake your money maker.
All right, we got "Shake Your Moneymaker" there. That was, of course, written by Elmore James. Oh, excuse me. Oh yeah, Elmore James, king of the slide guitar. And David,
That
do you
guy who
know?
wrote Get Shorty.
Was that Jimmy Thackery on the slide guitar as well on that track?
Oh yeah, that had to be Jimmy. Yeah, Jimmy was a great is a great slide guitar player. You know, I want to say one thing I noticed about this album, and I read it was recorded at the Cellar Door, I believe, and they were opening for Muddy. Is that correct?
From what I've found, it says tracked live at the Cellar Door and track recorders. It's hard to get into what was recorded where, but we can have our official fact checker check on that.
I'm just hearing a tiny bit of restraint on their part because Muddy Waters is there, and I'm just hearing a tiny little bit on this record, like on that song that you just played, "Shake Your Money Maker." I heard them do it a little bit wilder and crazier than that. So I think out of respect for, it also said that Pinetop Perkins was playing the piano, and you can hear it on some songs. I just hear a little bit of restraint from the Nighthawks on this LP, which turns out to be a good thing. I think on the results.
It's a tough line to toe because we talked about this with Anthony Parag. Very few musicians are ballsy enough to just go in, like Roy Buchanan would go into the studio unprepared and just say, let's wing it like we do live. This doesn't sound overly rehearsed to me, but it does sound like everybody's on the same page. They know when they're going to transition. They know when they're going to pass it, when the harmonica is going to solo, when the guitar is going to solo, when it's going to, move to the next bit, when it's going to be a break, like da 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 da. It doesn't seem as loosey goosey as maybe some of what Roy Buchanan recorded back in these days. They were a really tight band.
They were amazingly tight, and I can tell when I go see a band play, if I don't know who they are, I can tell within 10 seconds if they've been gigging a lot or not. And the Nighthawks are the epitome of a band who you just know have been playing. They played so much, they were just so tight. So tight and so in tune with one another. And that was another thing. I love to see the communication on stage between them. It was great. It's just fabulous.
Yeah, pretty electric stuff.
Hey, Alex, David, I have a question. So in terms of like authenticity, I know that we touched on a little bit in terms of like the lineage of this music and the style of the music. I think one of the requirements, though, like when you are playing the blues, is it seems like most of the people that I've seen play it, that it's been pretty authentic. They themselves have had the blues or have experienced the blues in some deep and meaningful ways. Did you find that to be the case for the community that you were kicking it with?
But can you say that again? Sorry.
So like the blues, playing the blues, it seems like having the blues or experiencing the blues in life is like almost like a requisite to play it authentically. Did you find that to be the case, or with the people that you saw playing the blues?
I could rant on that one. No, I feel like the whole blues authentic police thing, it infuriates me, to tell you the truth. I feel like
why does it infuriate you?
If you don't mind, it doesn't have to be authentic. I feel like if you're playing from your heart and soul, that's good enough for me. You don't have to sound like Muddy Waters.
But that is authentic, the Nighthawks, though, isn't it? Playing from the heart and soul.
I think. But that for me, no. I just want to hear somebody play with their heart and soul. I don't really care. The word authentic doesn't enter into the equation for me. I would say most blues fans feel the opposite of me, but that's just the way I feel. I want to hear somebody. I want to hear what's inside their soul, and however that comes out, that's fine with me. That's just the way I feel.
In the immortal words of William Miller from Almost Famous, do you have to be sad to write a sad song? Let's move on now to Madison Blues. One more track from Open
Oh, I
All Nite.
love this.
All you babes talk about your Madison shoes. Well, I got a dance I call the Madison Blues. Put on your Madison Blues. Put on your Madison Blues. I got the Madison Blues. Now put on your Madison Blues shoes. Yeah, 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 yeah. She told me she loved me, but I know it ain't true. Put on your Madison Blue. Put on your Madison Blue shoe. I got the Madison Blues now. Put on your...
All right, that is Madison Blues, a Chicago-style shuffle by, again, the great Elmore James. It's a pretty great tune. Pretty ripping.
We heard that tune, went to Joe's Record Paradise, told him we heard a song called Madison Blues. Have you ever heard of it? And he got, he laughed at us too. And yeah, we learned it the next day. Yeah, that I love it. That's always been one of my favorite things they do. It's just, it's so good. It's so good. So Mark's playing on that is just beautiful.
Well,
and his singing too, I will add, is pretty damn good on that.
I would agree with that. I think that was one of the things coming back to this record. I listened to it as we were plotting out season 1, but coming back to it this week, I thought, God, he's a better singer. I think of him as a harmonica player, but he's a better singer than I give him credit for in my head, and that's a pretty special combination.
Mark's
to be
such
so
a good singer.
masterful, on 2 instruments.
And his singing, I don't know if you've seen them lately, but his singing now is just, his voice is so rich and so full of soul and emotion. It's just beautiful. It's so good. I've always, from day one, loved Mark's singing too.
I'm glad you mentioned them playing, still playing, because A, go see the Nighthawks if you're listening to this podcast. Go check them out. And B, as we come to a close for season 1, I've just been thinking a lot about what's coming and DC hardcore and, how different that was. And I think before we started this show, the podcast, I kind of thought there was a branch of music that came and went before DC hardcore. But I kind of think of it differently now. It's like we're lucky enough in DC to have multiple branches of really vibrant musical traditions. Go-go, hardcore. But I don't think this kind of music has gone away. I think of young guys like Johnny Grave who are still crushing it, in terms of younger blues musicians. And then you got everyone up to the Nighthawks and you, David, who are still playing. And so it's almost as if there's it's a city that has enough space to let a few different branches live and thrive at the same time. And maybe certain branches are growing faster than others at certain time. Maybe that certain decades are going to bring in a little bit more from one genre and then another from another genre. But Alex, having gone on this journey with me, does that ring true to you? Does that make any sense? Am I
Well,
talking crazy?
it is always fascinating to see what was going on at the same time, in nearby areas, so I always encourage people to check out what was going on in not just the major cities, but, in some of the other places that were nearby. But to agree with you, yeah, there's lots of room for different lineages, but the overlap in some of those lineages is pretty interesting in and of itself as well. I remember, reading about Ian MacKaye and how much he dug Ted Nugent as a guitar player. And I was like, never made that connection, but they both can rip, And so the one thing though, just on the blues tip, there's tons of blues music being played in DC. If you go to WPFW, they do the blues calendar every single day. And I don't know if that's your flavor or not, but it's definitely blues and jazz heavy calendar of events. And it's tons of stuff going on every single week. So just keep that in mind if you're into blues.
Totally. David, do you remember, as we kind of round things out, I'm curious, do you have any memories of when the hardcore scene started to spring up in DC?
I mean, a little bit. I'm not familiar with. It's not part of my DNA at all. The hardcore scene. I remember the punk scene more, which I guess the hardcore scene. I'm not somebody to talk to about the hardcore scene. I was barely aware of it.
But your perspective is interesting because, yeah.
I think there's what you said.
Yeah.
There's room for all kinds of music here, and I love when it crosses when different styles kind of cross with one another. It's such a rich town. And I want to say just one more thing, what you were mentioning with the Nighthawks. Their guitarist now is a young, Dan still plays with them, but there's a young man who plays with them called Zach Sweeney. I don't know how old Zach is, but I would guess late 20s. And he's amazing. So Mark is reaching back and bringing out the next generation of blues players. And I'm pretty sure this, it's not maybe next Tuesday night, a week from Tuesday. And I think we're rehearsing, so I can't go. But he's playing at Hank Deedle's with a guy named McKinley James, who's a fabulous young guitar player. So Mark continues more than 50 years later to promote the younger generation of musicians and bring them to the forefront.
I love that. I mean, they all deserve their flowers, as the kids say, but Mark especially is just a legend of the scene, and we're lucky to have him. Believe it or not, we've kind of rounded out our time on this episode and on season 1. So as we do at the end of every episode, David, this is going to come out a mere 3 days from now. So if you have anything to plug for the remainder of 2024 or early 2025, now's the time. Tell the folks what you got going on.
Sure. Come see Going, Gone, the 7th, 19th at Hell's Bottom in beautiful Tacoma Park. It's our last gig after 43 years. Give us a kiss goodbye. I've got a new band called Thursdays in Hell that will be playing out soon. We hope to see you. This was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for this podcast. And really, thanks for caring about the musical history here. It means much to me. Thank you.
Oh, it's been our pleasure. And I mean, David, for real, the point of this was just to talk to cool people about cool things. And this has been an absolute blast. You have so much to say about all this stuff from firsthand experience and just your own opinions. This has been, I could not have asked for a better way to round out season 1. For the first time this season, I'll do my own plug. Catch Broke Royals on February 1st at Songbird. And Alex, got any plugs to send us out?
No, I'm doing nothing of note. No, actually, just real quick shout out to I want to give a big shout out to Erin Frisbee, who continues to be just an incredible mentor for me, helping me with songwriting. And she's someone who does make a livelihood with doing music type stuff. So if you are inclined to want Erin Frisbee to work on your musical project, you should reach out to her. I'm sure she's on social media. Erin Frisbee, she's great.
I love it. Well, let's go out with Red Hot Mama, the last track on this album. And thanks again, David, for joining us. And thanks to all of our listeners for joining us as well. It's been a great season. We will be back at some point, at some time, in some future. Signing off.
Bye.
Sayonara. Later, skaters.